Hello and welcome, Exiles, to my Big Slam, Big Ignite, Bog Shaman, where we juice up the AoE on Sunder to the moon, where we can get these satisfying junks across the screen with a little bit of Chain Explode and a little bit of Ignite Prolift thrown in. The character's all about scaling life and using the new unique axe that was added this league, the Grey Wind, which basically is, let's be honest, it's the life-based version of Ephemeral Edge. It's essentially the same idea. It gives you some base damage based on your life instead of your ES, and it happens to be fire, which we are going to ignite with, and that's the whole concept. Scale a bunch of life with Bog Shaman, nothing new there. Bog Shaman has some duration, or sorry, some damage over time synergy, and you just put the two together and you have a good time. Now, let's get into a lot more of the, I guess, specific details on the character and how we went about doing this and what you can expect if you want to play this character yourself. Now, I know it's the end of Phrecia League. I want to throw this caveat out there. This character, I'm pretty sure, could be played pretty well as just an elementalist. I did a league start test with elementalist before Keepers League, and Ignite Slam elementalist is a really good time. It was one of my top contenders for builds I was considering league starting. And Void, if you check him out on YouTube, there will be a link to his video below. He actually did a full-on Ignite Elementalist that turned out really well. This is definitely taking it in a different direction, going with life scaling and the Grey Wind. But the proof of concept is there. Ignite Elementalist Slams works really well. And I think you could definitely take this Bog Shaman skeleton, throw on an Apostate, lose like 5,000 to 6,000 life or something, but then have better Ignite scaling and just in general, because Elementalist has crazy damage scaling through shock, through golems. I'm even stealing an Elementalist node with the all damage Ignite Fizz conversion node. So you get the idea. There is the skeleton there. I know phrecia won't exist next league, but if you want to play this sort of build concept, Elementalist does it really well. Now let's get into a bit of the setup here. So how did I go about scaling life? Obviously, we're Bog Shaman, which has this node right here, Sanguine Power, super OP. Basically says if you have a bunch of ES on your gear, you get a bunch of life. It's where you take chest pieces that have 1200 ES, and now you have 1200 life. You have a helmet that has 450 ES, now you have 450 life. You have a shield that has 223 ES, that's now 223 life. You get the idea. Sanguine Power is just Apostate, except better because you don't have to sacrifice your chest slot. But Apostate is the option you'll go for in a non-Phrecia league. Then on top of that, Bog Shaman also has 40% more damage over time, which is good for Ignite, as well as Toad Pack 75 AoE. Now, when I say this would be good for Elementalist, things like Toad Pact is just weaker than the Golem nodes. Golem nodes give you a similar amount of AoE without the 40 minus res all downside, and then they give you other things like top multi, like accuracy, like attack speed, like regen. There's a lot of extra things you get with like the Golem node that's just downright better than Toad Pact. So in some regards, you lose some power because you lose Sanguine Power, but you gain a lot back with Elementalist. The Shock node is similar damage to Pandemic. There's a lot of power on Elementalist. So I want to stress, if you want to play a build that looks like this or plays like this, I think Elementalist will pull it off really well. So anyways, Sanguine Power for life scaling, Toad Pack for AoE scaling, and then a bit of damage over time. And you'll notice we have not a 4th Ascendancy point because we're using one of my favorite new Ascendancy points, but also one of the hardest ones to use, Corruption's Embrace. I like this a lot with Relic of the Pact, even more than Ol, which people might find surprising because Ol's insane with Relic of the Pact. And it's the last line that says, if you have 8 corrupted items, you get Sacrifice of Blood. This is a very niche thing that I don't think people know too much about, and it's something I love using, which gives you a thing called Blood Barrier. It says while you are on full life, your regen also recovers Blood Barrier up to 30% of your maximum life. Now you'll see on my character, you'll see a shield over here that says 9.4 thousand. Now technically when I have graphs on, I'm taking them off because they make an annoying sound. It goes up to 10.1 because we're at 33 life, but let's take the graphs off just for an example here. This is essentially a pseudo energy shield ward. It's a barrier that the enemy has to chip through in order to do damage to your character. They have to get through this. Now, what I like to use with this is Coward's Chains. This belt says you count as full life while you are cursed with vulnerability, which you can count as both full life and low life. It just makes you always count as full life. Basically what this is doing is this is meaning whatever regen we have is constantly going to apply to our blood barrier. Normally blood barrier is like, okay, once you're at full life, I'll start healing above that. But with Coward's Chains, you can have reserved life, and it just constantly gives you, it just constantly regen and applies to the blood barrier. I think this feels amazing with Dissolution. Dissolution of the Flesh, wherever I have that on my tree, which, you know, it's somewhere. It's somewhere here, I swear. I know I have it somewhere. Where the hell did I put Dissolution? Okay, there we go. Dissolution. Dissolution has this weird situation where if enemies hit you, you reserve life for 2 seconds. It can be kind of awkward to work around. There are very important things you need to get with Dissolution, which is like ailment immunity. So we have bleed, poison, ignite immune, all these like damage over time ailments. You want to get those immunities for Dissolution because there's a window in 2 seconds where after you take damage, you need to have 2 seconds of not taking damage. And if you have like an ignite hit you and the ignite lasts 4 seconds, all of a sudden that 2 second window to have your life get unreserved again becomes a 6 second window because you have that 4 seconds of taking ignite damage and then 2 seconds on top of that. So you need ailment immunity. But aside from ailment immunity, there's still a situation where you take some chip damage and you don't really have a way to recover that chip damage when you're playing Dissolution. And Blood Barrier, I think, is this magical solution that gives you a way to recover while taking a bunch of random chip damage. Because the idea is our character has a ton of life. And because our character has a ton of life, our character can have a good amount of regen. Now, the thing is, when an enemy hits our blood barrier and it removes 3,000 life, we have 2,000 regen that is applying to that blood barrier at all times, which means enemies can be hitting that blood barrier and it'll be recovering. It's this really nice layer that combines with Dissolution to give you like a buffer that keeps healing, and you're not necessarily feeling like you're playing that 2 second window with Dissolution. It feels way better for Dissolution builds. For example, I've been doing a bunch of 8 mod corrupted T16 Dune harvest, which are pretty rippy, and my character's only died 6 times after doing all the Ubers. I died, I think, 2 times in Uber Maven, 0 times in any of the other Ubers, and then a few times while I was doing these harvest maps, which I feel like that's pretty solid for a character where you're just chucking into a full mod effect T16 8 mods with very little filter. The only thing I was filtering out was like avoid elemental ailments, for example. Like there was a lot of pretty rough maps that I was going through. Just to give you an idea, like these are the maps that I'm running. I'm not really canceling out many mods. There's a lot of like cancer mods in here. And then on top of that, you have the extra mods you get from phrecia, you know, extra damage multipliers and stuff. And Dissolution felt fairly comfortable through it all because of Blood Barrier. I'm a huge Blood Barrier supporter, and I'm going to keep promoting this whenever I like to play Dissolution. This is going to be my go-to. Now, the big downside of this, you have to have 8 corrupted items, which 8 corrupted items is insane. It adds a lot of extra cost unless you have a build that has a ton of like cheap uniques or something. Because you have to make a good rare, and then after making the good rare, you have to risk the corruption to not brick it. Definitely a big like cost for benefit situation where you have to be willing to make multiple items to then put this on. So I will put that caveat on there. Blood Barrier comes with a huge cost if you have to corrupt a bunch of gear, and it can be painful. For example, I made a chest piece that had 1300 ES. I think when I checked trade, it was like a chest piece valued at around 100 to 130 divines, and I corrupted it and it bricked. And so there's a lot of situations where you can make some really good items, corrupt it, and then it bricks. So Blood Barrier does come with a cost. It's this really cool thing when you get it set up, and I really am a big advocate for it. But there is this big opportunity cost of you have to make your gear piece multiple times, or you're going to have to settle a bit on how good your rares are in order to corrupt them or afford making some, like buying some cheaper pieces and then YOLOing the Val Orbs, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's Blood Barrier. That's playing around the life scaling for Dissolution and defenses. Now let's talk a bit about our tree. You'll notice we have a bunch of tattoos. What I'm doing here is I'm essentially getting Caspero, which allows me to tattoo a bunch of my tree. And the reason I'm doing this is because I need a lot of res. When I'm playing Toad Pack, I have minus 40 all res, and I need to account for that. So part of accounting for that is getting a bunch of tattooed lightning res, which eases up some of my suffix pressure. I'm also tattooing regen wherever I can, which eases up on my making my sustain for Blood Barrier better. One of the downsides with Blood Barrier is it does make you regen 50% less, but keep in mind that regen applies to both your regular life pool and the Blood Barrier simultaneously. Forces Courage Chain, not as good as something like a Mage Blood, but that's sort of the stuff that goes along with it. Another thing we're doing on this character is we're also doing the Fire Res tattoo with Falcon Red Dream. Obviously, that's best in slot for life scaling. It's insane. And then on top of that, we have some tattoos with Bleed Avoid just to cap off our Bleed Avoid to get bleed immune from our boots. So we have 4 tattoos with Bleed Avoid to get our 100% bleed avoidance. So yeah, that's the stuff going on there. And then last but not least, tree stuff. This is adorned with Fire Dot Multi life clusters. When it comes to life scaling, adorned is it's just best in slot. It's really hard to get a concentrated amount of percent life throughout your build. And one of the only ways you can get a large amount of that is through something like the life percent on jewels and adorned. So if you want to really min-max life scaling, that's just the best way to do it. One of the more higher investment pieces, obviously, before you get adorned, you can just play with rare jewels with some faster ignite and stuff like that. I didn't have like any source of faster ignite, so that would be really good if you have like a rare jewel with like percent life, faster ignite, fire dot multi, that sort of thing. It would play pretty well, but you would have less tank and maybe similar damage. With faster ignite, you might actually even have better damage. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. Another thing we did on the build is we went for unspeakable gifts. You'll notice we have 3 clusters here. This is kind of like a quality of life thing. It doesn't really help our character's endgame power, but it feels really good in maps to have 30% chance for your enemy to explode with chaos damage, as well as we have 20-something% chance to explode with Ariaths. And then we have the all damage ignite from Elementalist. And then we have Ignite Prolift from our gloves. So what happens is you kill an enemy, that enemy has like 60%, 50% chance to explode. They explode, they ignite the enemies, those enemies ignites, Prolift, hit the next enemy, that enemy explodes, and it chains out. So you can see in the footage, like part of the reason when I would do that Sunder Slam, it would cover a big AoE, but a lot of monsters to the sides would all die because of this explosion Prolift setup. Very feels good situation. That's kind of what we were doing there. Now, you may also be asking yourselves, Lance, why is the AoE on your Sunder so big? I don't see a lot of AoE on your tree. So you'll notice when we Sunder here, we have a pretty dang big Sunder. And where is the AoE coming from? Well, number one, you need increased AoE on your build. So we have Toad Pack. If you played Elementalist, you have AoE there. Another source is Fist of War. Fist of War comes with like 50 AoE on it. So you have 59 AoE from Fist of War. So there's some good percent AoE at baseline. But on top of that AoE, we also have things like Blood and Sand, which is about 19% more AoE. It's really easy to go with an Empower on this because it's such a low percent reservation. It feels pretty good to put an Empower on it and only get like an extra 2% reservation, but get another 3% more AoE. So we have like 20% more AoE. Then we have an auto-exerted Seismic Cry, which is another 50% more AoE. So you combine those things together and you get some pretty dang big slams, and they're really satisfying. I have the MTX for Glimmerwood. Real quick, I'll show the difference of just no MTX for the people that will not have a Glimmerwood MTX. The Glimmerwood MTX is like really pronounced spikes that go up, but Sunder with regular is pretty big as well. I don't think I had yeah, I didn't have Fist of War on that, but that's the difference of what it looks like, Glimmerwood versus the regular Seismic. Glimmerwood, I think, is much more like punchy, spiky, like it's their taller looking spikes, but it covers the same AoE. Okay. Now, after all of that, gearing, bunch of rare gear where we went for ailment immune boots. And the way we did this is you do a hollow fossil, get a fractured pair of boots with like fractured life on Warlock, get hollowed fossil, then get a glyphic fossil. This gives you a corrupt essence mod as an outcome. So you have a guaranteed abyssal socket, you have a corrupt essence mod, and then you add in shuddering and corroded. What this does is it eliminates 3 out of the 4 corrupt essence mods. You want cannot poison, and the corroded and the shuddering eliminate the mana regen while moving or stationary, and it eliminates like the drop burning ground, and it eliminates the reduced damage while stationary. It eliminates all the other possibilities. So with that 4-socket resonator, you will always get an abyssal socket and cannot poison, and you're just going until you can annul off the extra suffix, or you just hit an open suffix. So you want abyssal socket plus cannot poison, open suffix, and then you'll do multi-mod, bristle matron for suffix can't be changed, veiled chaos, and then just slam. Like unveil movement speed, and then just slam. And you're doing that until you hit either a good percent ES or a good flat ES. Percent ES, T3 is like better than T1 flat, so keep that in mind. That's roughly what you're looking for. But you rinse and repeat until you get movement speed plus ES plus that fractured life you have. And then moving backwards, you just benchcraft, avoid, bleed. So this plus the avoid ailments I have on the boots right now, all you need is 1 jewel with avoid shock, roughly around this 40% range. And that between the boot implicits gets you 40% or 100% chance to avoid shock. The boot gives you 60% avoid bleed and poison immune. Then the tattoos from bleed avoid gives you the other 40% for bleed avoid. So you're bleed immune, poison immune, 100% shock avoid, and then you use storm shroud for the rest of your ailments. So that covers all of the ignites and stuff like that. And this protects you from these ailments that make dissolution a pain to play. As for the other rares, I went pretty try hard with trying to force on accuracy. Even with precision and 2 T1 accuracy rolls, I'm only at about 2k accuracy. This feels mostly okay to consistently hit an ignite, and it does work with elemental overload, but our uptime on elemental overload isn't great. With elementalist, you'll have an ice golem, your accuracy will be better than mine is now, and it'll probably just be worth to go elemental overload. But if you're on more of a budget, it's okay to just play RT. I played RT for the majority of this character, and the damage is still pretty solid even without the elemental overload procs. As for the rest of the gear, it's all about getting, you know, just rare ES gear, pure ES on body armor. As for helmet and gloves, 1 T1 life roll with T1% ES and flat ES is generally the most optimum rolls. And then for the other gear pieces, I went for reflected gear with just a high life roll and res. If you want to really min-max the build, going for like a manifold with like, let's say, dot multi and like life reservation, you could probably fit in some other auras like Tempest Shield and stuff that like you want to min-max, you could do something like that. But I just went for some rings I bought off trade that had okay res and some high life. And then for the amulet, I was in between using a Great Wolf with percent life and regen, or Great Wolf with percent life and dot multi, and going for the anoint like Whispers of Doom. Or you could do what I did here, which is I did the 4 anoint, strangle, gasp, which every time I look at that, I think strangle, grasp. But you go for a 4 anoint and try to corrupt it rare. And then I used tainted exalts to try to get life on it. I got really lucky and got T1 life. Tainted exalts is a huge gamble factory. It'll take you a while, but that's what you want to go for. I think this is technically maybe the best in slot. Although a good double anoint would be an option as well. There's a lot of good rare double anoints, but that's mostly only applicable to a full-on real trade league where there's a lot of amulets being generated from people playing Blight. Now, to talk about the rest of the character, that covers the gearing. As for the playstyle of the character, it's all about just big Sunder Ignite, and then on single target, add Bane. I have Leap Slam and Frostblink for moving around, but it's mostly just slam, jump around, that sort of thing. Pretty much all there is to it. Not too complicated there. And yeah, I think that covers most of it. As for the curse real quick, it's a 1-button curse through Bane plus Enhance and then LE weakness plus flammability. Shout out to Uber Dan. The first time I saw somebody doing this was last phrecia League. Uber Dan was playing the same Val Cold Snap Val Architect type of thing as I was, and he had the idea of using Bane with Enhance to make the curse button 1 button and just kind of add some quality life. The thing happens is with Enhance on Bane, you actually get enough increased curse effect that it outweighs the less curse effect, and then it ends up being a fully efficient 1 button double curse. I like it a lot, and thanks to Uber Dan for showing me that. So yeah, that's the idea of the character. As for graphs, Tender Embrace for endurance charges, and then just 2 graphs with a bunch of percent life. Pretty simple stuff. That is the Bog Shaman Ignite Slams. I'm probably going to do another build, try to squeeze one more in before the end of phrecia. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy this video of the Bog Shaman Ignite Sunder. Thanks for watching as always, Exiles. Peace out. Have a good one.